The old manor stood against the twilight sky like a sleeping giant. Sarah pressed her face against the car window, watching as shadows danced across the Victorian mansion's weathered facade. Her husband Mark squeezed her hand. "It's perfect," he whispered. "Just like the pictures." Sarah wasn't so sure. The Blackwood estate had seemed charming in the online listing, a romantic getaway for newlyweds at an unbelievable price. But now, seeing it in person, something felt wrong. The windows looked like hollow eyes, and the ivy climbing the walls seemed to strangle rather than decorate. Mr. and Mrs. Chen. An elderly woman emerged from the shadows of the front porch. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, and her black dress seemed to absorb what little light remained. "I'm Mrs. Hendricks, the caretaker. Welcome to Blackwood Estate." Mark bounded out of the car enthusiastically, but Sarah moved slower, her eyes never leaving the house. As they climbed the creaking steps, she noticed something odd. Every window was dark except one on the third floor, where a pale light flickered. "Is someone else staying here?" Sarah asked, pointing upward. Mrs. Hendricks didn't look up. "No, dear. You're quite alone. Must be a trick of the light." The interior was grand but faded, like a beautiful woman who'd aged without grace. Crystal chandeliers hung from water-stained ceilings. Antique furniture sat beneath white sheets like sleeping ghosts. The air smelled of dust and something else, something sweet and rotten. "The master bedroom is on the second floor," Mrs. Hendricks said, leading them up a sweeping staircase. "Dinner will be at 8. I live in the cottage out back, so ring the bell if you need anything. Though I must warn you, I'm a heavy sleeper." She handed Mark an old brass key and disappeared down the hallway with surprising speed for someone her age. Their bedroom was unexpectedly beautiful. A four-poster bed dominated the space, draped in deep red velvet. Candles had been lit throughout the room, casting warm, dancing shadows. A bottle of champagne sat in an ice bucket that had somehow stayed cold. "See," Mark said, pulling Sarah close. "It's romantic." Sarah wanted to believe him. She let him kiss her neck as he fumbled with the champagne cork. But over his shoulder, she saw something that made her blood freeze. In the full-length mirror across the room, she could see their reflection, and behind them, the faint outline of a woman in a white dress standing in the doorway. Sarah spun around. The doorway was empty. "What's wrong?" Mark asked. "I thought I saw nothing." "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. As they drank champagne and tried to settle in, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows seemed too deep, too alive. And somewhere in the house, she could hear it, the faint sound of a music box playing a melody she almost recognized. Dinner was an uncomfortable affair. Mrs. Hendricks had prepared an elaborate meal: roast duck, potatoes, vegetables that looked fresh despite the remote location. She served in a dining room that could seat 20, leaving Sarah and Mark isolated at one end of a table that stretched into darkness. "How long have you worked here?" Sarah asked, trying to make conversation. 30 years, Mrs. Hendricks replied, refilling her wine glass. "Since the tragedy." "What tragedy?" Mark leaned forward, intrigued. The old woman's face became unreadable. "Just an old story. Not fit for newlyweds." She glanced at the grandfather clock in the corner. "I must go. Lock your door tonight. The house settles in strange ways." After she left, Mark laughed. "She's trying to spook us, playing up the haunted house angle." But Sarah noticed he locked the bedroom door anyway. They made love that night, but Sarah couldn't fully relax. She kept hearing sounds, footsteps in the hallway, doors opening and closing, that damned music box playing somewhere distant. When Mark fell asleep, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. At midnight, the music box stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Sarah sat up, her heart pounding. The candles had burned low, leaving the room in near darkness. She could barely see Mark's sleeping form beside her, but she could see the mirror, and in it, the woman in white was back, standing at the foot of their bed. This time, Sarah refused to look away. She stared into the mirror, her breath coming in short gasps. The woman was young, maybe 25, with long dark hair and a wedding dress that seemed to glow with its own light. Her face was beautiful but wrong, eyes too wide, mouth stretched in a smile that showed too many teeth. The woman raised one pale hand and pointed at Sarah. Sarah screamed. Mark jerked awake. What? What is it? The mirror. Look at the mirror. But when Mark looked, there was nothing there. Just their own reflections, pale and frightened in the candlelight. Sarah, there's nothing. She was there. I saw her. Mark pulled her close, making soothing sounds. It's just the stress. New place, old house, that creepy caretaker. Your mind is playing tricks. Sarah wanted to believe him, but when Mark fell back asleep, she stayed awake, watching the mirror. And just before dawn, she saw it again. Not the woman this time, but words, appearing on the glass as if written by an invisible finger. Get out. Sarah didn't tell Mark about the message. In the morning light, she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. But when Mrs. Hendricks brought breakfast, Sarah decided to ask questions. Mrs. Hendricks, what happened here 30 years ago? The old woman set down the tray of eggs and toast with trembling hands. You saw her, didn't you? Mark laughed nervously. Saw who? Victoria Blackwood, Mrs. Hendricks said quietly. She died on her wedding night. Right in that bedroom where you're sleeping. The room seemed to grow colder. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. How did she die? Her husband killed her. Edward Blackwood was a jealous man, consumed by paranoia. On their wedding night, he became convinced she'd been unfaithful. He strangled her while she begged for her life. Then he hanged himself in the attic. Mrs. Hendricks looked directly at Sarah. They say Victoria still walks these halls, looking for revenge against happy couples. Against brides who got the happiness she was denied. That's ridiculous, Mark said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Mrs. Hendricks stood. Then explained the other couples. The honeymooners who've stayed here over the years. 7 couples in 30 years. All of them left within 2 days, white-faced and terrified. One bride went mad. She's in an institution now, still screaming about the woman in white. After she left, Mark tried to laugh it off. She's just trying to scare us. Probably gets a kick out of it. But Sarah noticed he kept glancing at the mirror. That afternoon, while Mark napped, Sarah explored the house. She found a library filled with moldering books and old photographs. In one album, she found a wedding photo from 1955. Edward Blackwood was handsome in a cruel way, with hard eyes and a tight smile. But Victoria was stunning. Dark hair, bright eyes, a real smile that lit up her whole face. She was wearing the same white dress Sarah had seen in the mirror. Sarah's hands shook as she turned the page. More wedding photos, but these were different. Victoria's smile was gone. In each subsequent photo, she looked more frightened, more trapped. The last photo showed her standing alone outside this very house, her expression one of pure terror. Someone had written on the back, 3 days before her death. Sarah heard footsteps behind her and spun around. No one was there, but the temperature had dropped dramatically, and she could see her breath misting in the air. Then she heard it, a woman's voice, soft and sad, coming from everywhere and nowhere. He didn't believe me either. That night, Mark began to change. It started subtly. Over dinner, he kept staring at Sarah with an expression she didn't recognize. Not love, but something darker. Suspicion. Anger. Did you go into town today? He asked suddenly. No, I was in the library all afternoon. Why? You're lying. His voice was flat, emotionless. Mark, I'm not. I saw you. I saw you with him. Sarah's blood turned to ice. With who? Mark, I haven't left the house. But he wasn't listening. His eyes had taken on a strange, glazed quality. He stood abruptly, his chair falling backward with a crash. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know? Mark, Please, you're scaring me. He grabbed her wrist, his grip painfully tight. You're just like her. All women are the same. Deceitful. Unfaithful. Sarah tried to pull away, but he was too strong. In his eyes, she saw something that terrified her. He wasn't seeing her at all. He was seeing someone else. Someone from another time. Edward, she whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. You're not Mark. You're Edward. His grip loosened slightly, confusion crossing his face. For a moment, she saw her husband again, frightened and struggling against something invisible. Sarah? What's happening to me? I can't control. Then his eyes went dark again, and he wasn't Mark anymore. Sarah ran. She fled through the corridors of Blackwood Estate, her husband's footsteps pounding behind her. She could hear him shouting, accusations, threats, words that Mark would never say. She tried the front door, but it wouldn't budge. The windows wouldn't open. The house itself had become a trap. She ran upstairs, her mind racing. She needed help, but her phone had no signal. Mrs. Hendricks was in the cottage, too far to hear her screams. She was alone in this nightmare, being hunted by her own husband's body with a dead man's rage inside it. Sarah locked herself in the bathroom, pressing her weight against the door as Mark pounded on the other side. The mirror above the sink began to fog, and words appeared. I tried to run too. Victoria, Sarah sobbed. Please, help me. The pounding stopped. In the sudden silence, Sarah heard that music box again, playing its haunting melody. And then Victoria's voice, clearer now. The attic. You must go to the attic.
Sarah waited, barely breathing, until she heard Mark's footsteps retreat down the hallway. She eased the bathroom door open and peered out. The corridor was empty, lit only by flickering wall sconces that cast dancing shadows. She'd seen the attic door during her exploration, a narrow entrance at the end of the third-floor hallway, locked with a heavy padlock. But when she reached it now, the padlock hung open, swinging gently as if someone had just unlocked it. The stairs beyond were steep and dark. Sarah climbed them slowly, using her phone's flashlight to see. The music box was louder here, the melody echoing off the walls. And there was another sound, crying, a woman weeping inconsolably. The attic was vast, filled with sheet-covered furniture and stacked boxes. Cobwebs hung like curtains in the corners. But Sarah's attention was drawn to the center of the room, where a rope still hung from a wooden beam, its noose swaying slightly despite the still air. Edward Blackwood had died here. Victoria. Sarah called out softly. The crying stopped. The sheets covering the furniture began to stir, moving as if blown by a wind that didn't exist. And then she appeared, Victoria Blackwood, more solid now than before, standing beneath the rope. Her wedding dress was torn and stained. Dark bruises ringed her neck. He killed me here, Victoria said, her voice echoing strangely. Made it look like I hanged myself after killing him. But everyone knew the truth. They just didn't care. A woman's word meant nothing. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Are you? Victoria's head tilted at an unnatural angle. Or are you just sorry it's happening to you? What do you want? I want what was stolen from me. A life. A future. Love. Victoria's form flickered. Every few years, they send me another bride. Another woman who gets to have what I lost. And every time, I try to stop it before Edward can kill again through another husband's hands. You're trying to help me. I'm trying to save you from my fate. But I'm also... Victoria's face contorted with rage and grief. So very angry. You get to live. You get to be loved. Why should you have what I couldn't? Sarah heard footsteps on the attic stairs. Mark was coming. Victoria, please. This isn't who you are. You're not a monster. You're a victim. 30 years I've been trapped here. 30 years of rage and loneliness and pain. Do you know what that does to a soul? Victoria's form expanded, growing larger and more terrible. The temperature plummeted. Maybe I am a monster now. Maybe that's all that's left of me. Mark emerged from the stairwell, his face a mask of fury. But he stopped when he saw Victoria, his expression shifting to one of recognition. "Victoria," he said. But it was Edward's voice, Edward's cadence. "My darling wife. You've come back to me." "I never left," Victoria replied. "You made sure of that." Sarah watched in horror as the two ghosts, or whatever they were, faced each other across the dusty attic. Mark's body was still her husband, but his soul seemed elsewhere, replaced by something old and hateful. "You betrayed me," Edward said through Mark's mouth. "I never betrayed you. You were insane with jealousy over nothing." "Liar." Edward lunged, and Sarah screamed. But Victoria was faster. She moved between them, her ghostly form solidifying. When Edward's hands, Mark's hands, closed around her throat, they didn't pass through. They connected. And Victoria smiled. "You can touch me now," Victoria whispered. "After all these years, you can finally touch me again." Sarah understood in a flash of terrible clarity. This was Victoria's plan. She'd lured them here, possessed Mark with Edward's rage, led Sarah to the attic, all to recreate that terrible wedding night. But this time, with witnesses. This time, the truth would be revealed. Edward's hands tightened around Victoria's throat, just as they had 30 years ago. But Victoria didn't struggle. Instead, she looked directly at Sarah. "Run," she mouthed. "Tell them what you saw." "No," Sarah shouted. She couldn't leave Mark, couldn't leave him trapped in this cycle of violence and vengeance. She did the only thing she could think of. She grabbed the rope, Edward's rope, and threw it around Mark's neck from behind. Edward released Victoria instantly, Mark's body jerking backward. For a moment, three separate consciousnesses seemed to war for control. Mark, Edward, and something else, something Sarah didn't understand. "Mark!" Sarah screamed. "Mark, I know you're in there. Fight him." Mark's eyes cleared for just a second. "Sarah, I can't, he's too strong." "Remember our wedding," Sarah sobbed, still holding the rope but not pulling. "Remember your vows. You promised to love me, to protect me. Be that man. Be my husband, not hers." Victoria watched, her expression unreadable. The attic seemed to hold its breath. "Mark Chen," Sarah said firmly. "I love you. Come back to me." Something shifted. Mark's body convulsed, and when he looked at her again, she saw her husband, really saw him, for the first time since dinner. "Sarah." His voice was his own, weak but real. Edward's presence fought back. The air crackled with rage and resistance. But Victoria moved closer, placing her ghostly hand over Mark's heart. "Let him go," she said softly. "Edward, let him go. He's not yours. This anger, this jealousy, it destroyed us both. Don't let it destroy them too." "You were mine," Edward's voice said, weaker now. "I was never yours. No one can own another person. Not in life. Not in death." Victoria's form began to glow. "I forgive you, Edward. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." The attic filled with blinding light. Sarah shielded her eyes, but she could feel something releasing, like a pressure she hadn't known was there suddenly lifting. When the light faded, Mark collapsed into her arms, gasping and shaking. Victoria stood nearby, looking more solid and real than ever. The bruises on her neck had faded. Her wedding dress was clean and white again. "Thank you," she said to Sarah, "for loving him enough to save him, for showing me what love really looks like. What happens now? Sarah asked. Now I can rest. And Edward? Victoria looked at something Sarah couldn't see. Can face what is done. A scream echoed through the attic, a man's scream, fading as if falling from a great height. Then silence. Victoria smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. Take care of each other. Don't let anything, fear, jealousy, pride, come between you. Love is too precious to waste. She began to fade, becoming transparent, then translucent, then just a shimmer in the dusty air. Victoria, wait, Sarah called. What really happened that night? Did you? I loved him, Victoria said, her voice barely a whisper now. That was my only crime. And then she was gone. Epilogue. They left Blackwood Estate at dawn, with Mrs. Hendricks watching from her cottage window. The old woman didn't try to stop them, didn't ask for payment for the remaining days. She just nodded, as if she'd expected this. Mark didn't remember most of what had happened, just fragments, like a terrible dream. Sarah told him some of it, but not everything. Some things were too dark to share. They drove in silence for an hour before Mark finally spoke. I felt him, you know. Edward. Inside my head. His thoughts, his feelings. The jealousy was like poison. It made him see things that weren't there, believe things that weren't true. He glanced at Sarah. I can't imagine hating someone I love that much. You don't, Sarah said, taking his hand. That's why you came back. 6 months later, they received a letter from Mrs. Hendricks. Inside was a newspaper clipping from 1955, Victoria Blackwood's obituary. It listed her death as a suicide following the murder of her husband. There were no mentions of the truth, no acknowledgement of what had really happened. But attached to the clipping was a note in shaky handwriting. The estate has been sold. The new owners plan to tear it down and build something new. I thought you'd want to know that Victoria's room has been peaceful ever since you left. No more music box. No more crying. I think she finally found her rest. Thank you for giving her that. E. Hendricks. Sarah folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box with their wedding photos. Someday, maybe, she'd tell their children about the honeymoon that almost destroyed them and the ghost who saved them instead. But for now, she was content to simply love her husband, to cherish each ordinary day, and to remember that sometimes the most haunted places aren't houses at all, they're the prisons we build inside our own hearts. And somewhere, she liked to think, Victoria Blackwood was finally free.